stuck between my rights and my wrongs. Second guessing what I'm doing. Like, am I really there for my boy? Not enough, but if I'm paying child support, do the making for time that I've lost. Whole time paying this court system. Can't even call my little man a game system, cause my checks be short. And if your bag too short, well, you had to miss a month. Slipping up, I gotta pick it up. Grind limitless, but it got your folks like, yeah, I hope you don't get caught. Like I missed them payments on purpose. Cause you see I failed and I'm hurting. Ain't had no job, so no working. Or the job I work is not working.
Shalom, this is your Ark. Y'all is Magnified, coming back with another informative video. I titled this video, Federal Rules Are Persuasive Authority. But before I tackle this subject, as always, I must state for the record, I'm not a lawyer, I do not practice law, and I do not pretend to. All my videos are for informational and educational purposes only. They're all facts and all truth. Nothing more, nothing less. So with that being said, guys, let's get to it. Okay, so I have a quick question before we get started, right? Have you guys ever noticed that every time I go live or I post an informative video, there are certain YouTube channels who try to come on their channel to discredit the information that I put out there, even though I show without a shadow of a doubt the information that I'm providing, and I can prove without a shadow of a doubt the information I'm providing, they still try to come on their channel to discredit this truth, okay? Not to mention that these same individuals that are doing that are proven to be on child support, okay? So, to be honest, I shouldn't be making this video going back and forth with this cat because I put up his court information showing that he's in fact on child support. I put up there that he had a show cause rule on March the 5th, I think, 2020, where he simply ducked show calls or ducked service, okay? So, like I tell you guys, man, these cats trying to tell you all how to go to court and fight when they're not going into court to fight themselves. These cats are ducking services. They're living in their mom's basement, and they don't have anything to provide as evidence of them helping anyone, okay, let alone themselves. So that's the reason why they're jealous, guys. But I just had to put that out there because I'm going to rebut this individual right here. Like I told you all get a lot of information from my videos because I go into detail with the information that I put out there, okay? But you have individuals who come out of one book, okay? We don't even know the title of this book. We don't know what this book is dealing with. He comes out of one paragraph from this book and try to make it seem as though this book is the show all and be all. Okay, so his whole thing is this. His thing is that the federal rules of civil procedures supersede state court civil procedures, rules of civil procedures. Okay, but he don't understand when federal rules of civil procedures supersede state court rules of civil procedures, because federal rules of civil procedures do not supersede state court civil rules of civil procedures in state court. Okay, they may do in federal court. That's why they was created. But in state court, no. In state court, they are what? They are called persuasive authorities. Okay, and we're going to go over all of this. So you're going to get better understanding. Like I tell you all, I always use what? 2 witnesses to support everything that I'm saying. So you're going to get better understanding. So you all will know. God's Magnified is always telling the truth. We don't have to take his word for it. We can just read it on the screen. It's right there. Okay, so let's listen to this individual try to explain this situation, trying to say that the federal rules of civil procedure supersede state rules of civil procedures. Let's listen in.
The federal procedure rules supersede state procedure rules. So the federal rules and civil procedures overrides the state rules of civil procedures, and you can use federal in the state.
So you heard that. He said federal rules of civil procedures supersede state rules of civil procedures. He said you can use federal rules of civil procedures in the state. Okay? So now, let's get to rebutting that false information. So I'm going to screenshot this right here so I can zoom in so we all get a clear look of exactly what this book say, so we can get better understanding and learn how to get right wisdom, right knowledge, and right understanding of the things that we are reading. Okay? So hang tight real quick. Okay, so now, as you all can see, I just simply zoomed in so we get a much clearer picture, okay? So let's pick this up where it states 4.03. It states generally, right? Then it states federal procedural rules supersede state procedural rules. The key word in this whole statement is what? Generally. Whenever you see the term generally before any statement, that means what? Certain situations is true, certain situations is not. Okay? Simple and plain, plain and simple. To further prove this, we're going to read the first sentence in this paragraph that gives what? An example of when it applies. So now, let's pick this up where it states, federal rules apply even in diversity cases. Federal procedure rules apply even in diversity cases. Okay, so for those who do not understand what a diversity case is, let me break it down to you. A diversity case is dealing with what? Two separate states or two individuals in separate states, okay? So since we're dealing with child support, let's deal with child support. Let's say your child's mom live in Texas and you live in California, right? Right. That's two separate states. So that means that's what? That's diversity jurisdiction. That's going to be a diversity case. Okay. So let's say the mom applies for services in Texas. Okay. Texas grants her the services. Now they come after the father in California for enforcement. That's still diversity jurisdiction. Why? Because Texas is now trying to enforce in a different state. Okay. Now that enters into what? Federal territory. Why? Because the money have to travel from state to state. That's called what? Interstate commerce. Okay, so that's diverse jurisdiction. We know interstate commerce also deals with what? Maritime law. Okay, so because it deals with maritime law, that's federal what? Jurisdiction. And it's just that simple. Okay, but let's say that, okay, the child mom's wins in Texas, but Texas say, okay, well, we're going to give you the services, but we're going to have California do the enforcement where the father lives. So now if the state that's doing the enforcement is in the same state as the father, then guess what? That removes diversity jurisdiction. So after that, once that removes diversity jurisdiction, then the federal rules of procedures will not apply in that situation. Okay, unless the father goes back out there and attack the original order that was created in where? In Texas. Okay, hope you guys understand that. I couldn't break it down no simpler than that. My bad, fellas. I had to take that call. It was very important, but now I'm back. Okay, so now we just went over a few diversity cases, okay? But let's continue reading. At the top, where it states one of the principal purposes of the Rules Enabling Act of 1934 was to allow the United States Supreme Court to promulgate federal rules of civil procedures so as to create uniform rules of practice in all the federal courts. So, as you all can see, the federal rules was to what? It was to make uniform rules for all federal courts can practice. So they don't have to go through individual state to state using their rules. They all just had their own rules. So when you're in federal jurisdiction, these federal rules would apply and not the state rule. And it's just that simple. But let's continue. So let's read it one more time. It says, one of the principal purposes of the Rules Enabling Act of 1934 was to allow the United States Supreme Court to promulgate federal rules of civil procedures so as to create uniform rules of practice in all the federal courts that were independent of various state procedural rules. So again, they wanted their own rules in federal so to be independent from the state rules. So once you bring your issues to federal court, then these rules will apply and not the state. That's when the generally comes in, because generally, once you in federal court, then federal rules apply. Okay, when you're in state court, state rules apply, and I'm going to prove that as well. But let's continue. Prior to the adoption of the federal rules, the federal district court followed the Conformity Act, which required them to conform their procedures as closely as possible with those of the state in which they were located. This tended to debalkanize procedures in federal court. This all changed with the adoption of the federal rules, even in cases which jurisdiction is based on diversity citizenship, right? Then it states, and in which federal courts must follow substantive state law in deciding the merits of the case. Okay, so now what we just read that the U.S. Supreme Court created the federal rules of civil procedures, so all federal courts can be in uniform with the same rules, okay? Once you enter into federal jurisdiction, the state rules of civil procedures do not apply, but the federal rules of civil procedures apply. If you are in the state, then your state rules of civil procedures applies, and the federal rules of civil procedures do not apply, okay? Let's further prove that with case law. Let's proceed forward. Okay, so now, as you all can see, we're coming with a case law. I always tell you guys, out of the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses, let each matter be established. So this is going to be the first case law that we're using coming out of the state of Texas. I'm using this Texas case law. Why? Because the individual who's putting out that nonsense and making them garbage videos, he resides in Texas, okay? So now, let's pick this up at the top where it says Southwestern Refining Co., Inc., with a few additional petitioners. Then it states versus Julia Barnall, right? So now, let's stroll down to 4. right? That's straight and simple and straight to the point, guys. 4. Let's pick this up at the top. It states, Southwestern argues that the trial court abused its discretion by certifying this case as a class action. Rule 42 of the Texas Rules of Civil Procedures governs class certifications. Texas Rules Civil Procedure 42, the rule is patterned after Federal Rules Civil Procedures 23. Consequently, federal decisions and authorities interpreting current federal class actions requirements are persuasive authorities. Okay, so federal decisions, right, and authorities interpreting current federal class action requirements are persuasive authorities. Okay, so that means that what? Federal Rule of Civil Procedures 23 is what? A persuasive authority, okay? There's one case law coming out of Texas. Let's continue. Okay, guys, now let's get to the second witness. Again, the second witness is coming out of the state of Texas. Why? Because the individual that's spreading that nonsense on his channel resides in the state of Texas. So now, as we all can see, this is another case law. This case law is pertaining to what? The University of Texas Medical School at Houston and versus Allen Thin. Let's continue on. Right? We're going to see that they're talking about what? Texas Constitution, which deals with the due course of law, right? Where states without due process of law dealing with the Constitution. So we're also dealing with due process of law, dealing with the Constitution, and we also know that due process is in what? The rules of civil procedures and what? State and federal rules of civil procedures. You must follow what? Due process. But let's continue. Now they're talking about what? The United States Constitution, right? And what? Due process. My bad, guys. And due process, right? Exactly. So now let's read it. It says, while the Texas Constitution is textually different in that it refers to due course rather than due process, we regard these terms as without meaningful distinction. Case law to support that, but let's continue. As a result, in matter of procedural due process, we have traditionally followed contemporary federal due process interpretations of procedural due process issues. More case law than it states also, then it says see also, but let's continue on. It states, although what? Not bound by federal due process jurisprudence in this case, we considered federal interpretation of procedural due process to be what? Persuasive authority in applying our due course of law guarantee. So again, federal rules and state court are what? Persuasive authority. Okay, but let's go to a different state now to show you all that not only in Texas. Let's go to Alabama. Let's go to a different state, just to see if they say the same thing. Let's proceed forward. Okay, so now as you can see, this is the third witness also testifying against the individual that's making these false statements on his videos, trying to mislead people down the wrong way. Okay, so now let's pick this up out of Alabama. This is the second state, that we're posting out of the three witnesses. The first two came from Texas and the third one's coming from Alabama. Just to further prove not only one state signed it, but they all signed it. Let's continue on. This states First Baptist Church of Central, right, versus Central Mobile Gathering Inc. versus Bart B. Chamberlain. Let's continue. Let's pick this up right here. Just to further prove it, let's get to the meat and potatoes, where it states Rule 23 of the Alabama Rule of Civil Procedures is identical to Rule 23 of the Federal Rule of Civil Procedures, right? Right. Then it says, thus, the federal authorities are persuasive when interpreting the Alabama rule, but they are not binding on this court. So they are not what? They are not binding on this court. Okay? It's that simple. When they say they are not binding, the they they're talking about is what? Federal authorities. Okay? Or should I say Rule 23 of the Federal Rules of Civil Procedures is not binding on that court. Further to prove it. But like I stated, they are what? Persuasive authority. So now, let's find out the definition of persuasive authority so you all get full understanding. Let's continue on. Okay, so now, let's pick this up at the top to read the definition for persuasive authority. 2. Persuasive authority. Persuasive authority is any authority a court is not bound to consider or follow. And it's just that simple. So now, when the individuals was quoting the federal rules of procedure in the state court, the judge simply ruled that they was what? Persuasive authority. Meaning what? A court is not bound to consider or to follow those rules. But let's continue. But may consider or follow when reaching a decision. Where there is mandatory authority, persuasive authority is not necessary. Although its use is not prohibited, persuasive authority consists of both primary authority and secondary authority. Primary authority and persuasive authority. On occasions, courts look to enact laws as persuasive authorities. And it's just that simple, guys. Okay, so again, persuasive authority is what? Persuasive authority is any authority a court is not bound to consider or follow. So again, when the state courts ruled that those rules of civil procedure or those federal rules of civil procedure was what? Considered persuasive authority, that means that the court did not that means that the state court did not have to follow those federal rules. So again, guys, that's all I'm gonna do for today. Let's get this right wisdom, this right knowledge, this right understanding, okay? Stop letting these weirdos on YouTube who's still on child support trying to tell you all how to get off of child support, okay? I keep telling y'all, man, study to show thyself approved, because there's a lot of false individuals out here claiming to be something that they're not. All right. And also, for that brother that made the video, he threatened that he was going to put up the case that I did in my live stream. By all means, brother, put up the case. Okay. Put it up. If you have my response, put my response up too, so people can see how well I write. Okay. And then once they see how well I write, I'm going to put up your response in your family case. Then you respond back to your child's mom on that motion to show cause. We're going to see how we're going to compare who writes better. Okay. So make your next move your best move. All right? I already embarrassed you enough now. You might as well go ahead and throw in the towel, because next step is going to be you deleting your channel. So now, guys, again, thanks for all for watching. A lot of people are not getting the notifications, but I don't know what's going on, man. YouTube is stopping a lot of people from getting my notifications. But if you hit the bell, unhit it and then hit it again, okay, to make it, probably got to refresh it or something. I don't know what's going on with y'all not receiving my notifications. But again, that's all I'm going to do for today. You all be blessed out there. If you need my help, hit me up in my email again at y'allismagnified@gmail.com. With that being said, shalom.